Hello, my name is Richard Yu, and this is the final project of Leonardo da Vinci and artworks of High Renaissance. Before we really get to know about Leonardo da Vinci's amazing artworks and how he influenced them, we first have to know who Leonardo da Vinci really is. Leonardo da Vinci was born in April 15, 1452, was an Italian polymath who worked as a painter, draftsman, engineer, scientist, theorist, sculptor, and architect during the High Renaissance. He was trained in Florence by the famed Italian painter and sculptor Andrea del Verrocchio after being born out of wedlock to a wealthy notary and a lower-class lady, or around Da Vinci. He began his career in the city, but spent most of his time in Milan in the service of Ludovico Sforza. Later, he worked in Florence and Milan once again, as well as Rome for a short time, all the while collecting a considerable following of imitators and students. He spent the final 3 years of his life in France at the request of Francis I, where he died in 1519. This famous artwork is created by Leonardo da Vinci in the period between 1495 and 1498. It was created during the period of the High Renaissance. The media in this painting is tempera, gesso, mastic, and pitch. This is created in the 15th century and is housed by the refectory of the convent of Santa Maria delle Grazie in Milan, Italy. In this artwork, it shows a dramatic scenario depicted in numerous closely related times in the Gospels, such as Matthew 26, 21 and 28, in which Jesus declares that one of the apostles would betray him and subsequently institutes the Eucharist. Each of the 12 pupils reacts in a way that Leonardo considers appropriate for that man's personality based on his view that posture, gesture, and expression should reflect notions of the mind. In the 15th century Italy, the theme of the Last Supper was a popular option for the refectory walls of monasteries and convents, where nuns and monks might eat in the presence of Jesus' final meal. In Leonardo's rendition, Jesus is seated in the center of a large table with the apostles to his left and right. He has a beard and wears the typical red and blue robes, but Leonardo did not give him the halo. Some historians believe that the halo is created by the light from the window behind him, or that the suggested lines of the pediment above the window create the appearance of a halo. As mentioned earlier, Leonardo da Vinci didn't only create the masterpiece of the Last Supper, but also created one of the worldwide known that is very superb and very influential painting called Mona Lisa. Continuing, Leonardo da Vinci's Mona Lisa is an oil painting on a popular wood panel that is perhaps the most renowned painting in the world. It was painted in Florence between 1503 and 1519, and it currently resides the Louvre Museum in Paris, where it has remained a pilgrimage site until the 21st century. The picture has been a topic of continuous study and curiosity due to the sitter's enigmatic grin and her unconfirmed identity. The picture depicts a woman in a half-length portrait against a distant landscape. However, this basic description of what appears to be conventional composition does not convey the magnitude of Leonardo's achievement. The gently sculpted face of the figure demonstrates Vinci's mastery of sfumato, which also means fine shading, and exposes his grasp of the muscles and skull beneath the skin. Leonardo da Vinci's meticulous observation and infinity patience are evident in the delicately painted veil, carefully worked tresses, and painstaking portrayal of folded cloth. The sensual contours of the sitter's hair and clothes are reflected in the valleys and rivers that surround her. The painting's overall harmony, particularly evident in the sitter's slight grin, represents Vinci's concept of a cosmic connection uniting mankind and nature, making it an enduring legacy of Vinci's vision. And another painting by Leonardo da Vinci that I wanted to compare and contrast with the other paintings was called The Lady with an Ermine. Leonardo da Vinci's work, The Lady with an Ermine, dates from about 1489 to 1490. The oil paint on walnut board is 40.3 centimeters wide by 54.8 centimeters high. Regrettably, the original backdrop was presumably covered in the 17th century. Cecilia Gallerani is the subject of the picture, which was most likely painted while she was the mistress of Lodovico Sforza, Duke of Milan, while Leonardo was in his service. Lady with an Ermine had a lot of paint applied to it. The entire backdrop was dark and her clothing behind Ermine was repaired, and the woman's translucent veil was repainted to match her hair color. Final retouching has given the impression that her hair reaches down and beneath her chin. Another modification was the insertion of black shadows between her right hand finger. A careful examination of the bottom two fingers revealed that they are far inferior to the others after being repainted by an unnamed restorer. In the original backdrop of this picture, an X-ray showed the presence of a door. Lady with an Ermine by Leonardo da Vinci is one of the most important and the most influential works in the Western art. Only a few genuine panel paintings of his have ever survived. Lastly, the last painting created by Leonardo da Vinci that I wanted to compare and contrast was called The Vitruvian Man. The Vitruvian Man was created around the year 1487. And it comes with the annotations based on the famous architect Vitruvius Polio's work. The pen and ink painting on paper portrays a man person in two superimposed postures with his arms and legs apart, written in a circle and square at the same time. The picture and text are known as the canon of proportions, or, less frequently, the proportions of a man. It is kept in the Gallery dell'Accademia in Venice, Italy, and is shown on rare occasions, as are most works on paper. The universal design is reflected in the proportion relationship of the pieces. A stable structure is also ensured by a medical balance of components. God's creation of the human body and human beings' own development of a decent building so share these traits equally. This concept of the creative microcosm evolved as one of his main unifying principles in the late 1480s. This architectural application, on the other hand, is merely the beginning of an idea with a really global applicability. Overall, Leonardo da Vinci's artworks influenced the world in many ways. While many people try to categorize individuals' abilities into science or the arts, Leonardo da Vinci thought that the two were inextricably linked. His scientific studies enabled him to represent the world in a thoroughly realistic manner, but his artistic vision allowed him to see and think about it in new ways, which led him to create astounding artworks. Da Vinci's research enabled him to produce extraordinarily realistic and lively pictures of humans. Leonardo's emotions are far more realistic than those of earlier painters. Many artists were influenced by Leonardo to take a more realistic approach to their work. Thank you very much. Also, here are my resources for this final project.